being able to take the living word of God and literally put that message into a film is one of the most spiritually fulfilling things I think I've ever done.
Whatever your goal is, often we tell ourselves, oh, the odds are infinitely small, that it's basically zero, but it's not zero. And so why not be that person?
Find a team, find a partner, someone to do it with. There's so many times on set where one of us is like completely stressed out and like wants to sit in a corner and die. And the other person is like able to pick up the slack, and it goes both ways. The best way to share the gospel now is to live it out and just be an example, lead as a servant, do the things that nobody else wants to do.
What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode. This is the Created to Create podcast, and I'm your host, Ben Gluntz. We're created by God to create, and we believe that's for a purpose. What's that purpose? Well, that's what we're here to talk about today. We're recording from Huntington Beach, California, and I'm with my good friends, Landon and Luke.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. This is our first opportunity to really dive into what we do with someone. We haven't had the opportunity to go through all these questions ever, so this is just really exciting for us to do for the first time.
Yeah, we've definitely thought about it, but we didn't really know when it would happen, but opportunity came, so it seemed like the right time.
David Kushner, Daylight. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that project definitely changed our trajectory. Not quite in the way we anticipated, though. So initially, after that project came out, things felt as they were really ramping up. Like, we did start to get some smaller leads relatively quick after that coming in. Everyone in our immediate circle was excited for us. And I also had a lot of like old friends from high school and growing up just like text me out of nowhere, like, oh my gosh, you directed this video. Like, that was like a pretty cool feeling, like to be appreciated as an artist in that way. Obviously that stuff died out relatively quickly after that, but what we weren't expecting is the kind of leads that we got from that project. So we took on about 6 solid leads directly because of that video over the last 8 months, which was great, but not nearly as much as we anticipated. What we found out is the artists reaching out to us were not typical artists. And I think, Luke, you can elaborate on that.
No, definitely. I mean, I remember it was only, on set with David when we were shooting Daylight, Ben Freilander, an upper guy at Virgin Music, was there. He showed up on set, he hung out, and literally like a week later, we were getting offers to shoot for Ex-Ambassadors and Jamie Miller and these guys, and we're like, wow, that's incredible. I would say there were 2 surprises, or two facets to that video that are interesting to me. The first being, because it was our first time doing a music video with a guy that had some decent, stuff going for him. I don't think we truly appreciated how much, how many eyes were on that project. Because before that, I think the most views we'd gotten on a video were like 100, 200K. And to be honest, I think most of those were bought anyway.
Yeah. Those weren't really.
I don't even know.
Is that something that happens in the space? People buy views?
For a lot of the artists we've shot for, you see, 120,000 views on the first day, and then
nothing.
Maybe another 20 over the next few weeks. So it's a little suspicious. So
the ratio there doesn't really add up.
Yeah, who knows what the actual number was? But we didn't really have a true good appreciation for it. We were like, oh yeah, it was a good video. Did 100 million views. And then more recently, I think. At least I've kind of come to understand how big of a deal that was, because I saw, Kid Laroi has, had a bunch of music come out and some songs that are really doing well. And, I don't like it. In 2 weeks, it hadn't even hit like a million views. And I was like, wow, that's really surprising. And also even I've seen a lot of music that has gotten almost the same amount of listens as Daylight did in the same amount of time. But the music video just doesn't really get a lot of attention. So I do wonder, if our music video did play more of a significant role in that than I originally gave credit for. Originally, I'm like, oh yeah, everyone loves the song, so they're watching the video by default. But I do wonder now, how much of that was because people were really connecting with the video. So I wonder.
Yeah. I mean, that is interesting to think about, definitely, because I think we all think that when, like you said, when someone likes a song, then they go to see the visuals. But in today's day and age, like everybody's kind of like on TikTok, they're like streaming things like videos and whatnot. And that is funny.
It did set
could go the opposite way.
it did set a ridiculously high standard though for us of what a successful video was. You know, like if it doesn't, if it's under 10 million, it's like a child's play. But
well, I was gonna ask you actually, like that's a lot of views to get, right? Like you guys are admitting that. Did that create sort of this view on you and your company? Did people assume like a larger amount of success, even just from viewing that video and the success that it had?
Yeah, so I think some people do assume that we have gotten like a good amount of success because of that. But I think realistically, and it's kind of a misconception, the views on music videos are almost entirely dependent on the song's reach.
Got it.
So like if you ever see like a director claiming like they earned all these views on their project, it's kind of cringy.
Yeah.
Like we tell people how many views, not to say how many views our video earned, but to say we were entrusted by a project of this size. And yeah.
That's exactly
and you
right.
Through.
That's exactly right. Is that it means we were trusted with such a high caliber of project. But yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think whenever we look at videos that got a lot of views, we don't necessarily think, oh, it's because the music video is crazy, unless everyone's talking about the music video like WAP or something. But
that was a wild
they
one.
probably contributed to those views for sure.
Most likely probably did. And with that kind of music video, you're getting like positive views and negative views.
100%.
Which
so
when it comes to views, it doesn't matter.
You
either love it or hate it, but you're still watching it. So
100%.
What was the creative energy like on set for that?
I'd say the energy on that set was like tangible.
Yeah.
It was our biggest budget at the time. It was the longest production we had done. It was the most fulfilling creatively we'd had the opportunity to do. And we had an incredible crew. Like our Steadicam, Zach, I'd consider him the master Shifu of Steadicam operators. He's a wizard.
That's true.
Why is that? Like, what does he do differently?
He's a movement designer, is what
Really?
we call him. Like when we think
I
about,
can see it. I know how Steadicams work, and I've seen it in action. But
when we think about like a whole image, probably it comes down to the last 1 or 2% where we're actually thinking about the movement of a shot, unless the movement is really key to that shot. If we haven't really decided, if it's just something arbitrary, we kind of like to leave it up to them, because we know that all he's doing is thinking all day, every day about movement. So that's
How important is kind of like the breaking up of duties on set when it comes to like specific tasks like that?
I would say that it's, I don't want to use the word necessary, because something that goes into guerrilla filmmaking is building your ideas around what you have access to. So I would say that you don't necessarily have to split up roles if the project doesn't call for it. But if you have the option to split up roles, then you can certainly make your ideas bigger where you can. So I know a lot of people will say, oh, it's so important to split up roles, like I can't do everything myself, but there are certain ideas you can do by yourself, and when you're starting out, that's pretty important.
Where do you guys draw that line, and how do you roll that into your philosophy when it comes to filmmaking?
Definitely for us, we start whenever we're building out our crew and our ideas, we start at zero. We start with just me and Landon. We know we're going to be there.
Yeah.
And then we look at the treatment and we look at what it absolutely calls for. We don't necessarily get gaffers or grips or any of those guys unless we're doing real big light setups, for Dean Lewis, we did a big moon box on a condor, with 12 sky panels in there or whatever. And, we weren't going to do that ourselves. But, I think it really comes down to that, only getting what you need so that way you can get more on the screen. And that just kind of is part of our guerrilla filmmaking philosophy in general. But,
it makes sense. I think like if you look at everything black and white, you're never going to truly be productive and get stuff done anyway.
No, 100%. But there's a lot of people out there. They're like, oh, okay, we're doing a music video. All right, let's get art department, first AD. We have a bunch of extras. All right, second. Let's get, a gaffer, grip, because we need lights, right? But no, you don't need all these guys. And I really think you can just stretch your budget so much farther the more you can do yourself, and you can do a lot more yourself than people really give people credit for. I think people really underestimate. They think they need these things, but if they just spend a little bit more time learning, I think they could probably achieve most of that.
Well, I was going to say you have to be willing, I think, to do that too, which some people aren't.
I think it's a fine line as you grow in complexity of sets, of which hats to wear and which ones to give off to professionals. And that's something we've done as we have gotten more leads and just more happening, as we've given off some jobs that we started off doing ourselves. And I think that's a really crucial part to that process.
100%. There's been a few times where we're like, okay, next time we're getting this person to do this. Like, just for example, whenever we were shooting, we shot this one video for Dean Lewis, and we were in a back lot. And it was like 3 a.m, and we had a bunch of extras there, and we needed to get them like, walking in the city and like driving their cars around.
Yeah.
And coordinating that while trying to do everything else was a nightmare. And so, basically we kind of decided next time, anytime we have a bunch of extras we need to give direction to, we'll get a second, because I really think it could really help in those situations. But that being said, a lot of people will be like, oh, there's 4 extras on set. Okay, have to get a second. But that's not necessarily the case. Definitely not for us.
Yeah. Would you agree it's kind of like easier to build from nothing rather than like have this whole structure and then kind of deconstruct that?
I would say it's more difficult because you almost have to try think in a really creative way from the ground up how you can not use these things. Because obviously if you have all these people, you can do almost anything, right?
Yeah. You have the systems in place.
If you need something lit and you don't exactly know how you're going to light it, then you can just hire a lighting crew and you'll have it covered. You can figure it out on set. But what we're doing is when we write the treatment, we are thinking, how are we going to light this? So that way we know if we need a lighting crew. So that way we know if we need to tone this treatment down a little bit to keep it in the budget. So, by the time we've written a treatment, I feel like it probably takes us a little longer than other directors to write treatments, but it's because we've literally found all the locations. We know how we're going to light everything. We've basically priced everything out, exactly how it's going to come out. And that's the only way that you can get as much as you can on the screen. Otherwise, you're just relying on your margin. And when you're relying on margin, usually, either you don't profit anything, or more likely a lot of production companies that, there's just a lot left over and it's fine, but the project isn't as good as it could be. Now, obviously, when you get into bigger budgets, like multiple six-figure budgets, those ideologies change a little bit.
Have a little extra change to spare.
Yeah. But when you're in the, small 5-figure budgets, especially under 5-figure budgets, if you're working with, you can do a lot with $1,000 if you really cater your idea around that budget. And we've done things that people thought, I'll go into that story later.
Yeah. I want to hear about it. It sounds like there's something interesting there. And $1,000 to me isn't a lot of money when it comes to filmmaking. Right. So that'd be interesting to hear. But it sounds like you put a lot of thought and effort into pre-production. Like that's like your bread and butter, is making sure you have everything before you even get started.
It's a good point. It's not something I've really ever thought about. There are a lot of guys out there that are like, oh, pre-production is everything. Like it's the biggest part. But I guess I didn't really give enough credit to it, but it probably is.
If nothing else, the treatment. I mean, you guys put a lot of effort in the treatment. So that says a lot.
We start every treatment and we get about an hour and we're like, how are we going to finish this? Because it always just seems so like to get from A to B, it always, we cannot conceive a path on how we're going to get there.
Yeah.
And then a few hours later, we always end up there and we're like, this is great.
Yeah. Like just a couple of days ago, we were like on the phone, like sitting there, like, we just don't know what to do. I'm like, all right, let's just sleep on it.
Yeah.
like
and
minutes.
We wake up the next day and it's like a light bulb turned on.
Yeah.
It's like, I can see it now.
Oh, I'm sure. Dude, honestly, I can see that because sleeping on ideas and sleeping on thoughts is probably one of my biggest things that I do. And it always comes out on the positive end of things.
It's really not uncommon for us to just both be at our desks over the phone, trying to write the treatment and just, we're maybe talking for an hour and 40 minutes of that is just silence. Just thinking, just willing something to come.
Yeah.
Just looking through
talking is
whatever.
Overrated.
Yeah, who needs it?
So do you guys like work well together then? Like as a family unit, one could say. Brothers-in-law.
Yes.
You work well together.
We are brother-in-laws, which you can do the math.
Is it brothers-in-law or brother-in-laws? I never quite.
I think the first word is not plural. I think it's brother-in-laws.
Brother-in-laws.
Or
I think it is brothers-in-law.
Brothers-in-law.
Because you are both your brothers.
I think you're right. It depends. If you're talking about both of us, it's brothers-in-law. If you're talking about me, he's my brother-in-law.
True. Yeah. So I think it is. Yeah.
No, but you're right. It's
not to get on a tangent, but
it's definitely not what I said. What I said is never the right answer, actually.
Oh my God.
But no, you're right, we are brothers-in-law.
So how is that like working together and collaborating creatively?
I would say that I wouldn't say we really see each other as in-laws per se, because to be honest, the fact that we're working together and happen to be brother-in-laws and happen to be friends really is coincidence.
Why is that?
Well, just we just became really good friends on our own, but it wasn't anything we were like trying to make happen. It just kind of did happen.
You just happened to meet his sister and fall in love. And
yeah, exactly. But I think I do think though that philosophies around working with family and working with friends is pretty similar. It's pretty much the same. And I think, it can be really great, but you have to be with the right kind of people for sure. You have to know, who they are. The most important thing is setting as many expectations up front as possible, because, like expectations not being fulfilled is the source of almost all conflict. Now, the part where I say you need to be sure you're with the kind of person, you got to know what kind of person they are. That's generally because there's a lot of people where even if you do set expectations, there's still conflict that arises, even if those expectations are met. You have to be with someone that has a lot of integrity and is trustworthy and that you can rely on. But if they fulfill those things and you put a lot of effort into creating those expectations, I think it can take you so much farther than otherwise.
Yeah. This is like what, your third attempt at this structure?
It's true. No, that's a good point. That is a good point.
Third time's a charm.
Yes, third time's a charm. Yeah, the first time was with an old friend from high school. I would say that a lot of the things I just said were learned experience. So I can't say I maybe went into those things with those thoughts. Maybe the second one, but it's its own thing. But
I think we're all born with a certain level of like intuition and discernment. I think those are definitely gifts from God, but I think the rest of it just comes from like working, learning, and like growing knowledge and wisdom from that as well.
Definitely.
You can't necessarily know everything and know every situation, and so experiencing it is like the greatest way to learn and grow.
100%.
Yeah, I agree. That's cool though. What is like the key like center point of like building your business? What was your like philosophy in doing so? What are the things you kind of live by?
So I'd say we kind of built our company on like about three different things. Our tagline is "Disturb the Traditional."
Okay.
And we go about that in a few ways. First of all, we want to bring the kingdom of God to the film industry, not only in our final products, but also on our physical sets. And we want to implement the gospel into secularly packaged products. Like I think I just see a need for that. There's a lot of amazing period films from like biblical times, but I want to see something that doesn't have Jesus involved on the outside, but then when you really get into it, it's just full of the gospel and full of modern takes on the scriptures.
How do you do that? That's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I really love taking biblical stories and putting them into our work in whatever ways I can. We aim to implement the gospel into all areas of our productions, in the final product, but also in our physical productions and on set. For the projects that allow it, I love writing treatments with modern takes of biblical stories in them, being able to take the living word of God and literally put that message into a film is one of the most spiritually fulfilling things I think I've ever done. It's an incredible honor to be able to worship the Creator in that way with our art. But obviously some of our projects don't leave space in the actual product for that. But on set though, as stressful as it can be, we aim to create a space of just peace and collaboration and freedom of expression. I love when crew members have ideas for things we should do, and it's just a team effort. I'd say that we live in a post-Christian society here in the US, and most people you meet have a history with the church or have had experiences with Christians in their life and have moved on from that. So I think the best way to share the gospel now is to live it out and just be an example, lead as a servant on set and just do the things that like nobody else wants to do.
So it's less like an evangelistic take, and it's more of a, hey, like this is how I'm called to live as a believer, so I'm going to live that way. And then when there are conversations that are brought up because of that, then I have an opportunity to evangelize and like share gospel.
Absolutely. And we have, despite the fact that, Daylight, for example, it was interesting because, we'd worked with David once before. We knew he was a believer, but we didn't necessarily know how he wanted to represent that to the public. And so we wanted to incorporate it. We felt like there was a good opportunity based on the song. But we didn't exactly know how to package that. And so we did it in a way where it was kind of both. It was like, it was wrapped in a secular package, but it certainly wasn't for anyone that, I guess, knew what our references were. And so in the end, we felt like it was pretty subtle, which was great. But the feedback on the video, like all the comments were totally like talking about the content from a biblical standpoint, and really? like all of them. And so that was really interesting because clearly that message came through pretty directly, even though it was not at all like blatant.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, no names dropped, no like blatant imagery or even wardrobe that like it was merely just kind of composition and maybe
there were some,
what do you call it, a resemblance of another scene, or... There
were some references, but they were pretty far-fetched. Like, the burning bush, and he's shaking hands with a burning man, reference of Pink Floyd. It wasn't exactly like obvious, but it came through.
There was a guy on YouTube like doing like a review like of the video, and when he got to that part, he was like, he's making a deal with the devil right now. That was so funny.
Art is subjective, I guess.
100%.
That's funny. But I mean, that project was wildly successful, and it's cool to see kind of, I guess, a vision that you had as artists kind of come to life and then be received well, like across the board. I bet. How was that like? What was the feeling you got from that?
Well, I think first, earlier you asked like what was the energy like on set. I would say that I was like, I think we were both pretty nervous. I was pretty like terrified the whole time.
Yeah.
Mainly because, for a lot of this, come up, basically every treatment we've written has been so scary. Like it's involved so many things that we've never done, so many variables that aren't exactly under our control, like really stretching it, and really so many things could have gone wrong the whole time. And so I think we were just relieved at the end when everything worked out, and we were just so stoked. And then after, of course it was super fulfilling.
Yeah. You talked about the imagery and how you have specific visions for wanting to implement the gospel in imagery and storyline. On the other side of things, do you have boundaries that you set on types of projects that you accept when it comes to secular projects? Because a lot of people would kind of like maybe freak out at certain projects that they get like approached by. How do you handle that?
I would say that
a lot of Christians, I'll say, not
no, you're
Christians.
Right. You're right. I would say that we haven't sat down together and been like, all right, here's the line. But I think we kind of both have a similar intuition as to what doesn't necessarily feel right. Mm-hmm. Obviously on one end it's pretty obvious, no big booty hose on supercars. That's certainly
no boats and hose.
No boats and hose. I mean, look,
what's my favorite music video?
I think there's two kinds of videos that we just try and stay away from because they're like the cliche. There's the rapping in front of the car, like hip hop videos. Yeah. And then more in our style, there's the videos of like the guy and the girl and they're in love and then they're mad at each other and then they're in love and again throughout the video. And I feel like 90% of music videos are that story. And it's just something we see like so often. So we just really try and stay away from that.
So it's partly because of just like maybe the nature of the story, but it's also like, it sounds to me like you guys have like this creative standard or this creative like vision that you want to bring into your projects. And those simple like stories kind of are just like repetitive and not really, they don't allow you to like fully exercise your creative muscle.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, I can't help. I mean, I have a hard time imagining when directors have written treatments for that they felt like this was something, different or groundbreaking.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe literally groundbreaking, but
maybe sometimes.
But no, I think, a philosophy that we've had for our growth and just for us as a company is really, for the most part, putting profit and money at the last line of priorities. And so we're just 100% growth focused. Mm. And that means that there isn't any treatment that we should ever write that we feel complacent about. Everything should be pushing our limits creatively, physically, technically. And so that's definitely something that is a huge priority. And I definitely think has contributed to our growth because I think a lot of people are out there not necessarily with growth on their mind. And to them, it's just another project. It's just another paycheck. And it's nothing that really stands out to them. It's like, oh, it's not Drake. So I'm just going to, write a whatever treatment and get this over with, collect a check. But that's definitely not how we operate.
Yeah. Each project kind of goes through a filter of clout, budget, and creative. And if it doesn't meet those, then we pretty much go to the next one. Kind of like that thing where it's like, you want the job done like fast, good, or cheap. And you try to select all three and one like ticks down. It's kind of like that. We kind of run it through the same filter to make sure each project is really doing something for us. And we're not just creating something below our level that's not going to achieve anything for us.
You mentioned something in a conversation we had before this, Luke, where you were talking about like essentially when you're growing a business, never necessarily work for free, but you work on projects that progress the goal that you have for your business.
Yeah.
That kind of sounds like what he's talking about.
No, you're right. So, there's this, you've heard of, there's a big debate out there on, you got a million guys saying, oh, work for free, work for experience. A lot of guys saying, never work for free, know your value.
Stand your ground.
Get paid what you're worth, all that.
Which is true to a certain extent.
Maybe. It depends if you're worth anything, right?
Well, that's
the worth doesn't have to be financial worth. It could be.
Well, yeah. So that's what I'm getting. So I would say
your value changes over time.
No. I see what you're saying. Yeah, 100%. So I guess, what I would say is it's not necessarily either of those things. It's always work for value. And when you're in the growth stage, rarely does that come in form of money, I would say. Most of the time you're getting paid in the growth stage, it's probably not a project that's pushing you to your limits. Because if it was, then why would they hire you instead of the guy that's been in that position multiple times?
Already done it, yeah.
Right. And so if it's, for them, if it's a low paying job, but they know that it's a great opportunity, they know they have that value, and therefore it should be worth that for you to do that if it progresses your career.
Yeah.
And so, that's what I would say is always work for value and don't necessarily worry about the money. I strongly suggest finding another method to make money while you do this, because it will really hold you back in your thinking and your decisions and what projects you sign up for. It could still be in the film industry that you make your money. It could be first day seeing while you want to aspire as a DP. But I definitely think it's a great idea to separate those things, because it really changes your perspective and your decision making.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I think people just get excited when they're building and growing, and they kind of like hear of other people making money, and then they're just like, oh, well, I want to make that amount of money. Like, I want to be successful, and so I'll just start charging that. And what I've come to find out is there are people that will pay that amount of money for a very wide range of skill sets, or a very wide range of like how good you are at something. But when you're talking about like even like niching down and getting really good at one thing, the clients know who they're hiring. And as much as they look at skill as well, they're also like hiring people that they know and trust and have built a relationship with. And sometimes the best way to build that relationship is like showing your skill set and not worrying about necessarily like the money coming in.
100%. Too many people out there are too quick to take the tiny little, personal sized pie and eat half of it.
Yeah. And
I would rather have a smaller slice of a much bigger pie.
Yeah.
That's our theory. Like, let's bake this pie as big as we can before we start eating it. That's the goal.
Fatten the pig.
I would like a pie that's the size of this house, and then get a tiny sliver of that pie.
Mm-hmm.
Then, eat a whole little personal size pie. There's a lot more pie on the big pie. And that's the thought.
How do you prepare yourself for that? Like those opportunities to kind of grow that? You talk about luck versus preparation. How do you like put yourself in a position to take advantage of those opportunities?
I'd say we're always ready to take advantage of the opportunities that come our way because of the team that we've built around us.
Okay.
We have an incredible producer, Yonel, as well as multiple talented crew members that we've developed relationships with, and they're familiar with our workflow that we bring on to almost every set.
Mm-hmm.
I think just having a trusted community of friends to work with, learn from, and just celebrate with is just, what gets me up in the morning and makes me want to create.
Yeah.
And I would say that you can think of opportunities like birds flying by. They're always flying by. But if you're not ready to catch one, you're not gonna get that opportunity. And so, we've put a lot of effort, a lot of countless hours into preparing our skill sets to be able to take advantage of those opportunities. And one thing we did know starting out is that we weren't going to have budgets to hire colorists. We weren't going to have budgets to hire editors. We're going to have budgets to hire gaffers and rent lights and and all these things. And so we basically ahead of time took the initiative to learn all those things to the best of our ability, and put ourselves in the most capable position to take any budget and be able to maximize it. And so whenever we did see that opportunity come by, these early opportunities, we were fully ready. We jumped straight on it. And if we hadn't done everything we had up to that point, it would have gone right by us.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
makes a lot
And
of
I'd
sense.
say it was somewhat luck, like the question. Like when we came out to LA, we were both interested in doing more like DP side of things. And after like a year or so of that, we just were kind of not being creatively fulfilled. The projects just weren't very cool that we were doing. And it was at that point, it was like, why should we try and climb the ladder when we can just own the ladder? And having all that experience with on the camera side of things and light side of things, like you just said, has helped us be ready to catch those opportunities as they come by.
Yeah. How do you that's interesting, like creating the ladder. How do you handle like other people in the industry that are kind of like your peers and whatnot when doing so? People that maybe would expect you to just be a part of the process of climbing the ladder.
We don't really, I'd say we're a little bit in a bubble, to be honest, because it's very rare that we go on other people's sets. I've only been on 2 other sets that weren't
since you started the business.
Just ever.
Yeah. Okay. Wow.
So we've fully just kind of figured it out as on our own pretty much as far as exactly what we need. So I definitely didn't ever feel like that pressure of going against the grain. I was more just doing we were just doing what felt logical to do. But I definitely did know that a lot of people will say, oh, if you want to be a DP, you gotta work your way up the camera department, eventually you get to first AC, big deal, and then maybe second unit DP or whatever, and then other people say, oh, you start as a DP but on really low productions and work your way up as a DP. A lot less people do that, and even just on the DP front, I think we were feeling a little boxed in general. It just felt like we just want more creative freedom. So we started directing and DPing together at the same time, which wouldn't work for most people, and just decided, we can just be our own production company and we will be the ladder instead of climbing it, and we'll just increase it as high as we can. And we're at the point now where, we have a feature film on our plate.
Oh, really?
That's awesome. So that's why right now, a lot of our projects are a little bit more far and few between, because we're trying to put a lot of effort and emphasis on that, while still
it's a pretty big project.
Exactly. But we also don't want to lose some of the bigger projects that come our way. So we're being selective with the music video projects we take on while we work on the narrative project. And then we're hoping mid next year, when we get a lot of the production done on the feature film, that we're going to kind of explode the music video and commercial side of things by bringing on new directors, bringing on other DPs, making it a little bit bigger of a production company. Which right now,
one where you don't necessarily have your hand in like every single aspect.
And I mean, right now, we're eager to do so many things. But right now, I think we're really feeling called to that narrative side of things, and we want to do that. And the opportunity, came by. So, we decided to say, what, we may not be like, as ready as I would have imagined we would have been before that, but we're taking it and we're doing it.
That's awesome. Why do you feel called to narrative films?
I think a similar concept that we've been talking about, but we've been doing all these music videos, learning about the music industry, and it turns out that huge budgets aren't going around that often with music videos. They are going around pretty often, and you can make a decent amount of money and achieve quite a lot with that. But like even after like the daylight video, what we were expecting more, and we didn't really get the return we were expecting. We think, with a feature film, there's no cap. The sky's the limit on that, I think that's really what's just drawing us towards that, is to experience that kind of freedom.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say like we're definitely like super drawn to narrative. I think every filmmaker goes through an evolution. You start out with all natural light camera. Eventually, they work up to a
GoPros.
GoPros even. That's how we both started. But I think eventually, you work to get up to like a camera on a gimbal, and you basically think you know everything. I certainly did. Little did I know what a small piece of filmmaking that was.
Yeah.
And then eventually you work your way up. You get to the music video side. The music videos, it's like, doesn't necessarily have to be linear, which makes things a lot easier because you can always cut stuff out or whatever. It can be more expressive. One thing that's great about music videos is you get to experiment a lot. And then the commercial space is kind of a little bit more of a step, usually in terms of continuity, and things have to work, a lot more. In the narrative, it's like you really can't cut anything out. Like everything has to work, and so it's definitely the most difficult form of filmmaking, and that certainly attracts us. And it's just like when shooting a narrative piece is unlike anything else. It just feels super fulfilling. And then, as Landon was saying, from a business side, first of all, no one gets into making movies for money, so we're certainly in the minority with that opinion. But I think what Landon is referring to is, while it may be more difficult to make money with a feature film than music videos, with music videos, the success of a project doesn't necessarily change anything except for maybe getting more music videos. But the success of something like a feature film where you own stake and it sells, the cap is significantly higher. And so we were just thinking to ourselves, we're putting every ounce of what we have into these projects, and it would be great if things do go incredible, that there's a large return on that.
Yeah, like you said, I think feature films are the natural progression. I mean, what's more impactful? What kind of, when I think of like artistic mediums, what are the things that everyone's talking about? And for me, that's movies. So naturally, I want to do the most powerful and significant form of art. And I think that it will be the most fulfilling because it's such a huge undertaking of a project. It's like typically like a year process. But yeah, I'm just really excited to get into that. It's just a world of unknown. We have like a plan in our heads, but I just know it's going to get absolutely demolished the second we step our foot in the door. Yeah. But I'm just excited for the ride. Is
this your first one that you're doing?
It's definitely our first feature film. But
first narrative piece?
No, it's not our first narrative piece.
I was going to say, that would be wild.
No, that would be, yeah.
Unprecedented.
But I think here's something that you really have to consider is, when someone says making a movie, what does everyone think? They think, whatever. Well, no, they think, okay, good luck with that, man, because it's so competitive, right? They say it's so competitive, basically have zero chance. That's basically the thought around it. But the reality is, there does have to be the next generation of these movie creators, of these filmmakers.
People get old.
Someone has to do it. Someone has to do it. And so the question is, what do we have to be to be the most fit for that replacement? Yeah. And I'm looking at us compared to a lot of people that are going to school to study cinematography, to study filmmaking, and to not be arrogant, but because of how much work we've done, our work does look a lot better than a lot of these people that are trying to do the same thing. Yeah. And so the question is, if anyone is going to be that new generation, I don't necessarily see why we can't be a part of it. Yeah. And that's our thought going into it is someone has to do it. So why not? Why not us?
Why not? And I think you have to have the level of confidence anyway, if you're going to do anything.
Yeah. Just dream big,
Dream big. Shoot for the moon, shoot for the stars. Or shoot for the stars, hit the moon.
Yeah,
exactly.
Nowadays it's shoot for the stars, hit Mars. We'll call it. Yeah. No, I agree though. I mean, you're right. And like, obviously when it comes to like arrogance and pride, like, I'm always someone that's checking my heart on those things as well. But, you do have to have confidence, and you have to have belief in yourself and God, and the ability to hone your skills in a certain way. And, we've developed systems in our culture and in our world that people follow to get to certain goals. But it doesn't mean that you have to use those systems to get there. It may be a little more of a like rigid path to get there, but it's still possible. So it's not like there are clear roadblocks where you're like, well, you didn't go to school, so you're not going to be a filmmaker. Unfortunately, we live in a world where it's possible, and it's a beautiful thing.
100%. I actually feel like we're at a time where the more unorthodox you are, the stronger you are in when it comes to these facets.
Yeah, you're stretching like more muscles, instead of just going bicep curls and leg day. You're hitting lats, you're hitting all these other muscles. I'm not a bodybuilder, but to use that as an example, deltoids. And yeah, deltoids, the pecs. But you're stretching and using these muscles, and as you continue to grow, you're going to be able to facilitate in so many different situations that maybe others wouldn't be. Yeah. Not all, but maybe some others. So that's really cool. Getting to the end of this, let's kind of shift gears a little bit. Speaking to like the younger filmmakers, people that are on their GoPros, people that are learning how to use a Ronin, what's a piece of advice to them on, how they can continue to grow and even make money from what they're doing, and the skills that they have?
I would say, the thing that really changed my perspective on filmmaking, when I originally, had the idea, I want to, maybe I could be like a filmmaker for a career. I kind of automatically dismissed it because it wasn't like, a traditional, form of career. Mm-hmm. And I guess I was telling my mom about it, and she basically said, you don't need to worry about, the business side or anything like that, how you're going to make money. All you have to do is put out the best work you can, and the cream always rises to the top. And so our philosophy in reality has just been just trying to be the cream to the best of our ability, and just relying on everything else to take us there. And that's kind of what has happened so far. So my advice for the young filmmakers would be, don't think that, acknowledge the fact that whatever your goal is, someone has to be the one to do that goal. Mm-hmm. And so often we tell ourselves, the odds are so infinitely small that it's basically zero, but it's not zero. And so why not be that person? And then also, of course, put out the best work you can, and people will notice, and it'll make a difference.
Yeah. And I'd say also just find a team, find a partner, someone to do it with. There's so many times on set where one of us is like completely stressed out and like wants to sit in a corner and die, and the other person is like able to pick up the slack, and it goes both ways. Yeah. So yeah, that's crucial.
No, it's cool you mentioned that, because a big thing that we talk about a lot on this podcast is community, and whether that's a partner that you're doing something with, or that's a group of people that you rely on for support. It's so important to have community, and even, as believers too, in our walks with God, it's like even more important to have community and to push and pull and pray with each other, and like get through hard times, celebrate good times, and ultimately just like point each other back to the Lord and what He's done, because without that, like, we're nothing anyway. So yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that. God, it's super cool that you've hopped on and talked. It's been really productive and amazing to hear like more of your story and more of where you've come from, and kind of like what you've done. Other than like the feature film, what do you see being next? Any specific like goals that you have?
I'd say the feature is like the main one. It's just so massive, it kind of blocks everything else out. But after the feature, we probably want to find representation for music videos, commercials. I love to do a little of everything.
Continue to scale and grow.
Yeah, I think every medium has its own pros, and I just kind of want to do it all and be able to always stretch my muscles in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we definitely want to scale more. The feature film is definitely a big thing on the horizon, along with just scaling Alterate and doing other kinds of projects that push us. But I was going to say something else.
What were you going to say?
I don't know. I don't know. I got way too comfortable.
We're thinking long term life goals. After we've done like 1 or 2 movies,
have kids.
Yeah, that second stage.
What I was going to say is
go to Mars eventually.
Who am I to say what will happen after the first feature film? Because to be honest, it might be a second feature film, depending on what happens.
Very true.
Yeah,
very true.
Yeah, hopefully.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming on and just like sharing your story.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, we love to feel like maybe we're sharing some wisdom from the things we've learned that maybe we could have used when we were coming up. So hopefully we achieved that.
Most definitely. I mean, there's always people in front of you and behind you in the journey. And so it's always good to like sit, reflect, talk, share. And, this is what the podcast is. It's to be able to kind of like share those stories and hopefully like inspire some people, cause other people to reflect on where they've been. And yeah, it's cool to get to sit down and talk.
100%. I feel like the more you feel like the less you likely know. And so definitely, when coming on a podcast, it's like, do we really feel like we have the knowledge to share? But, we share what we can, and hopefully it helps other people out.
Of course, not to keep this going, but one of the things that I talked about like a while back with a friend of mine was that like what's cool in like the creative industry is no matter where you're at, you can always like cater to someone. There's always like a market for like your level of skill. You just have to kind of like find that. And it's really cool because, as you're growing your skill, you get to make money and you get to grow. And, I look back on some of the projects I did a while back and it's just like, to me, I'm like, I sucked. But those people believed in me and like I gave them a product that they loved, even at that level, and that's just something special. So.
I wonder if it ever stops sucking, like when you look back.
Yeah, right.
People have told me
honestly,
that
it hasn't
there
yet.
was a point that it stopped sucking, but I still look at it and I'm like, it could be a lot better.
Yeah, I still feel like that. So.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you having us on.
Dude, of course.
This was really fun.
Yeah,
I really believe in this podcast. I think it's going to be really cool.